Car Crash While Hitchhiking, Part 2, by Denis Johnson. Moving toward the other car, I began to hear rasping, metallic snores. Something was flung halfway out the passenger door, which was open, in the posture of one hanging from a trapeze by his ankles. The car had been broadsided, smashed so flat that no room was left inside it, even for this person's legs, to say nothing of a driver or any other passengers. I just walked right on past. Headlights were coming from far off. I made for the head of the bridge, waving them to stop with one arm and clutching the baby to my shoulder with the other. It was a big semi, grinding its gears as it decelerated. The driver rolled down his window, and I shouted up to him, "There's a wreck! Go for help!" "I can't turn around here," he said. He let me and the baby up on the passenger side, and we just sat there in the cab, looking at the wreckage in his headlights. "Is everybody dead?" he asked. "I can't tell who is and who isn't," I admitted. He poured himself a cup of coffee from a thermos and switched off all but his parking lights. "What time is it?" "Oh, it's around 3:15, he said. By his manner he seemed to endorse the idea of not doing anything about this. I was relieved and tearful. I thought something was required of me, but I hadn't wanted to find out what it was. When another car showed coming in the opposite direction, I thought I should talk to them. "Can you keep the baby?" I asked the truck driver. "You better hang on to him," the driver said. "Is it a boy, isn't it?" "Well, I think so," I said. The man hanging out of the wrecked car was still alive as I passed, and I stopped, growing a little more used to the idea now of how really badly broken he was, and made sure that there was nothing I could do. He was snoring loudly and rudely. His blood bubbled out of his mouth with every breath. He couldn't be taking many more. I knew that, but he didn't, and therefore I looked down at the great pity of a person's life on this earth. I don't mean that we all end up dead. That's not the great pity. I mean that he couldn't tell me what he was dreaming, and I couldn't tell him what was real. Before too long, there were cars backed up for a ways at either end of the bridge, and headlights giving a night game atmosphere to this steaming rubble, and ambulances and cop cars nudging through so that the air pulsed with color. I didn't talk to anyone. My secret was that in this short while I had gone from being the president of this tragedy to being a faceless onlooker at a gory wreck. At some point an officer learned that I was one of the passengers and took my statement. I don't remember any of this except that he told me, "Put out your cigarette." We paused in our conversation to watch the dying man being loaded into the ambulance. He was still alive, still dreaming obscenely. The blood ran off him in streams. His knees jerked and his head rattled. There was nothing wrong with me, and I hadn't seen anything, but the policeman had to question me and take me to the hospital anyway. The word came over his car radio that the man was now dead, just as we came under the awning of the emergency room entrance. I stood in a tiled corridor with my wet sleeping bag bunched against the wall beside me, talking to a man from the local funeral home. The doctor stopped to tell me I'd better have x-rays. "No, now would be the time. If something turns up later, there's nothing wrong with me." Down the hall came his wife. She was glorious, burning. She didn't yet know that her husband was dead. We knew. That's what gave her such power over us. The doctor took her into a room with a desk at the end of the hall, and from under the closed door a slab of brilliance radiated as if, by some stupendous process, diamonds were being incinerated in there. What a pair of lungs! She shrieked as I imagined an eagle would shriek. It felt wonderful to be alive to hear it. I've gone looking for that feeling everywhere. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm surprised I let those words out, but it's always been my tendency to lie to doctors, as if good health consisted only of the ability to fool them. Some years later, one time when I was admitted to the detox at Seattle General Hospital, I took the same tack. "Are you hearing unusual sounds or voices?" the doctor asked. "Help us, oh God, it hurts," the box of cotton screamed. "Not exactly," I said. "I'm not ready to go into all that." Now what does that mean?" he said. "I'm not ready to go into all of that," I said. A yellow bird fluttered close to my face, and my muscles grabbed. Now I was flopping like a fish. When I squeezed shut my eyes, hot tears exploded from my sockets. When I opened them, I was on my stomach. "How did the room get so white?" I asked. A beautiful nurse was touching my skin. "These are vitamins," she said, and drove the needle in. It was raining. Gigantic ferns leaned over us. The forest drifted down a hill. I could hear a creek rushing down among rocks. And you ridiculous people, you expect me to help you. That's the end of the story.